Do not place limitations on yourself or allow others to pigeonhole you into a particular field or industry. My career has been anything but a straight line. There are many transferable skill sets that are extremely valuable in many roles. Industry knowledge can be taught or acquired. When in your career did you feel this was most tested, and what gave you the confidence to move forward when you're facing that decision?
Wow, what a great start here, Keegan. I think that really got tested. If I'm being honest, when I became CEO at the tender age of 39 years old at Indianapolis Power and Light, as intimidating as that was, first time CEO, again young, and when I remember sitting in the boardroom and seeing all the people that were lining up. I felt like, my God, they're all old enough to be my dad. They're probably sitting there wondering, where did this guy come from? And so I think, I learned early on all those things you just mentioned, which sounds like a really smart quote. And some smart guy must have said that before. I know it was me. But yeah, I know it was me. It sounded like me when you started talking. But I would say that was the pivotal moment in my career when I really started to learn more about transferable skill sets, because I was an attorney at that point. I had practiced law for nearly 13 years, but I was not an energy lawyer. So it wasn't like, oh, well, wait, it makes sense. He's an energy lawyer. Now he's going to be the CEO of an energy company. That's not how it worked. I was a litigator first and foremost, but what I really focused on was leadership skills, building my network, and trust and goodwill in the community. And that's what they were looking for in a CEO. And I happened to be at the right place at the right time, and the rest is history.
With all those other applicants, obviously that's a very sought after job, and students may be facing kind of that same role whenever they're applying for jobs. How did you stand out, and what can students do to stand out?
That's a really good question. I went through 5 rounds of interviews. It's hard for me to say since I'm not the one judging myself, and I didn't know exactly all the other people who were competing against me, what exactly was it that called their attention. But I have to at least probably think of, there's a few things that popped to mind. One is, I like to think I'm personable and I can connect with people. And when you're in the utility business and you're certainly the face of the utility, and you have to do what's called rate cases. So when utilities have to increase their rates because of rising costs and pass it on to ratepayers, you have to file a request with the regulatory commission and basically go through a, quote, trial, submit evidence and all that kind of stuff, testimony in favor of your case. And people will intervene, and special interest groups will come and say, no, we don't think you should raise rates, and here's why, and they oppose you. And then obviously the commission rules one way or the other. I think they're looking for somebody who had credibility, who had that goodwill, who had that network, and obviously the name of the game, right, is to really have stakeholder engagement and involvement, so that you have the right person on the job making the ask, and building that bridge with the community. So I think that's really where it all started to come together for me.
And you moved to Indiana in 1996 with about $9,000, no job waiting, and no network. That leap shaped everything that came after. What did those early months teach you about risk, resilience, and building trust in a new place?
I think about it now and it makes me want to throw up. Like the Rafael of today would never do that. Okay, like I bungee jumped when I was like 21 years old. I would never bungee jump again today, right? I mean, you take risks when you're younger, and I think that's just how your brain's wired. And as you get older, you get more risk averse. But obviously, it made me into the person I am today. I remember, being frustrated coming from Puerto Rico, not having a job, not having a car, not having credit to be able to rent an apartment. Everybody wanted everything in advance because, it's like, well, where's your income? You don't have any. And so I remember taking that 9,000 and some change and slicing it in half, because I had to spend $4,500 to buy cash, a a used Ford Taurus, which I remember was the first car that we had. And so, boom, now I don't have 9,000, I have 4,500, and I'm like, no income. But having the transportation was allowed us to get a job, which then allowed us to then start making money and climbing out of it. So it's all situational. It's a huge life lesson. Definitely, I would say you want to pursue your dreams and you want to do something big, you're going to have to take some risks, but there's a reward, and what's the worst that could have happened? I started thinking about that too. You do the pro con analysis, it doesn't work out. I head back to Puerto Rico, start my life there. I still already graduated from college. I'll find a job. The question is whether I want the job that I want. Am I on the career path that I want to be on? So I think you still, especially when you're that age, you can afford to take some risk.
What's the difference between taking a risk at that age versus a calculated risk? Because if someone's going to go start a business, 90% of small businesses fail. So what's your framework for looking at that risk?
That's an excellent question, and I think the difference between taking that kind of risk and the calculated risk, the difference is the in-between is called due diligence, and I think I had zero due diligence in the formative years, early years, because you just go with your gut. It's just pure ambition and adrenaline-driven decisions. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it, and you're bold, and it almost didn't matter if I had any data point that would say it's a bad idea. I probably would have done it anyway, because you're stubborn. You don't know what you don't know, and you're just kind of acting on impulse. And again, as you get older, you get wiser. You realize that you have access to information and resources that can better inform your decision. So you kind of try to create a mental checklist or actually write things down. Excuse me. And you start evaluating options, because oftentimes it's not just black and white. It's not heads or tails. It's like option A, B, C, D, E, and E, F, G, sometimes. And so narrowing it down, to what are some of the viable or preferred options, and then making an informed and calculated decision based on the data that you have. And again, the difference between that and the risk that I took when I was 22 years old is called due diligence. And I highly encourage people to use due diligence when they make decisions, because ultimately they lead to better outcomes.
You've been an attorney, led business development at Fine Line, became CEO of IPL, and now serve as the Chief Impact Officer at Old National. Each step is built on the last, but in very different arenas. How did you evaluate when to make a transition, and what made those moves convincing to people around you?
Gosh, you're full of really good questions today. Where do I begin? So going back to my attorney days, I was a partner. So you had reached the pinnacle within that, context. But there was a level of dissatisfaction that I had personally with the job. I didn't like the repetitive nature of it. I didn't like the fact that, and it's not a knock against attorneys or the profession or law firm partners for that matter. I think it's a matter of personal preference and taste. Not everybody likes Rocky Road ice cream, but it happens to be my favorite, right? So I felt like, let's say you have 100 clients in your book and you're just kind of moving the needle very little at a time for each client, just bouncing around file to file. I wanted to feel what it would be like to be working for one employer, like one client, and really moving the needle far and really creating impact. And so that's why I said, you know what, I'm going to go into the business world. And I put feelers out there, but I did so quietly. Once I made the move to Fine Line and it was announced, because his dear personal friend, he was in my ears, like offering me a role, and I thought it was a soft landing, everybody started calling me. And that was probably a testament to the network I had built and the reputation I had built, which I didn't even appreciate or realize myself. I didn't realize what my stock was until I left the firm. Like I was probably underestimating my worth, right? So once that happened, I opened my eyes and I saw how people were like trying to offer me positions, and here I am. I just left and I'm at Fine Line. How am I going to do that to my new boss? But thank God I have still to this day a really good relationship with him. Richard Miller, dear friend and mentor. And IPL was one of those companies that reached out to me and said, we want you to consider putting a name in the hat for the CEO position. I had no idea that it wasn't even on my radar. You know, I didn't think about it. I didn't think I was qualified. I didn't think I could do it. So I had a conversation with Richard, you know, really honest conversation. Said, and he was the one who told me, like, Rafael, you'd be an idiot not to try to go after it. And so I did. Now, I will tell you that, you know, once I did the IPL gig and I drank through a fire hose and learned all about leadership and cut my teeth in corporate world and environment, I started to feel more confident about things and myself and my capabilities and all the things that I could do. So I, you know, was opportunistic. You know, started talking to Old National Bank. They offered me a position to lead and be the president of the private bank and private banking corporate wide. And I remember sitting down with Bob Jones, who's also a dear friend. The guy that hired me at Old National is a retired CEO. And he said, we were over at dinner, and he says, Rafael, you know, what do you think about being the president of private banking? You know, we're trying to create a separate line of business, and you would be its first president. And I remember looking at Bob and saying, Bob, I don't know anything about private banking. And he goes, perfect. You know, and I'm like, okay. It struck me how bold, and looking in hindsight, how bold it is to really be able to put your stock into somebody that doesn't know the industry, right? Not no significant experience in the industry, but you just got the feeling that they're a leader, they can do this, they can learn this. You're hiring them for all these other reasons. It's not their industry background and knowledge. And that's the kind of chance that Bob Jones took on me. And I think I was successful at it for 4 years, and then transitioned to my current, you know, Chief Impact Officer and Market President here in Indianapolis role. So I haven't looked back since, but I would say it's a combination of being at the right place at the right time. It's a combination of putting in the hard work and investing in yourself and building your network and your credibility and your leadership. And part of it's luck, you know, and it all comes together sometimes. And I've just been very fortunate.
You mentioned that you didn't realize how strong your network truly was. For a student sitting down in college who may not know, you know, hundreds of people around Indianapolis or whatever the state they're in, how do they start building that network?
Well, your first thing you have to do is show up, right? So there's all kinds of events, and there's all kinds of like student discounts to attend events. I remember doing it as a first year law student down in Bloomington. I would travel to Indianapolis for some events and shake hands and meet people and get business cards, follow up with them. And I started little by little by little. I get it. You know, it's kind of intimidating when you're starting out, you're young, you don't know what to say, you think nobody wants to talk to you. But little by little, you start creating a name for yourself. And I think if you just go to school, well, I think this is true for even a young adult who's already in the workforce. If you go to work or school and you go home and you repeat that every day, and you never go to any event, and you never go, you know, never get on any board, and you don't participate in civic life, and you're not engaged, do not be surprised if you blink and 20 years have gone by and you're wondering what happened and why didn't you achieve this, or you didn't do that, or this things that never really worked out for me. I don't think you can even complain about things, for quite honestly. I think you waived it. There's so much opportunity out there. They need to get off their butt, go do something at least once or twice a week. I did it way more than that, by the way, but I'm not saying everybody has to be as crazy as I am. But I'm just saying that there's so much opportunity out there to be involved and engage. And one door opens, another door opens, another door. And before you know it, if you play the cards right, you'll be the one saying no to opportunities, not the one begging for them. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference to me between somebody who creates opportunities or a person who waits for opportunities to fall in their lap. And sometimes they never do. So you have to be willing to go out there and start. And I think there's no better time to start that than yesterday.
Mm-hmm. You've chaired the NBA All-Star Game, the Habitat CEO Build, United Way, and now Community Health Network. When you take on leadership in such high-stakes community projects, what's the first thing that you focus on, and what's the hardest thing to let go of?
Ooh, Man, I don't know who coaches you for questions, but those are some really good questions. Um, I would say the first thing that I focus on now at this stage, because I rarely will join any more a board or initiative if I'm not going to be in a leadership role, because I don't have a lot of time on my hands. So when I do have time on my hands, I want to make a difference, right? So I would say the first thing I look at is, okay, what legacy will I leave behind? What's my mark going to be? How can I make this better than I found it? How can I create more community impact? So that's the first thing that I do. And then you work really hard and you try to motivate and inspire people to get that done. And usually you're a chair of something for at least a couple years. So you have 2 years to get it done. I feel like I've done that for the most part, to varying degrees, but not always as successful as I was hoping in some cases. But the hardest thing to let go is, I firmly believe in term limits, and I firmly believe that once you've chaired an organization and you've kind of gone through the different roles, and now you've been in leadership, now you're a past chair, you eventually should start slowly moving out. Not that you stop supporting the organization, financially or going to events or whatever, but you need to step aside and let other people lead. All too often, and some of our leaders have stayed in their seat for far too long, not allowing others to come in after them with fresh ideas, fresh perspectives, new energy, and do more than they ever could. And sometimes, like, you're still living in the shadows of the people that were there before, and nobody wants to upset them and so forth. So I view my job to join, be engaged, create impact, leave a legacy, and get the hell out of the way. And now you let somebody else come in after you and do it all over again. And that's the beauty of it. So the hard time sometimes to let go of the relationships in the organization. Again, not that I don't talk to them anymore, but you don't see them as frequently. You don't interact with them as frequently because you eventually have to let go. You have to move on. And then I go and I do it again somewhere else, And so I would say that's sometimes is a hard part is letting go of that, sort of like pace of relationships that I had with those organizations.
You said motivate and inspire as soon as you get a part of that group. So if it's students that are going into, a group project, or you joining a new chair, how do you motivate and inspire without being too controlling or pushy?
That's the thing. It's like, I always tell people, like, you want to learn how to be a leader, you go join a nonprofit board and try to tell people what to do, because and like here, I'm market president. Okay, well, I'm on the executive leadership team. Well, if I ask somebody to do something, they're going to do it, right? Because of my authority within the organization. But when you're a nonprofit volunteer, board member, no one has a reason to follow you. Like, there's no authority. Like, everybody's a volunteer just like you, right? So getting people to lead you, to want to lead you, to want to follow you, is really at the heart of learning how to be a leader when you don't have the title and the authority behind you. I think it really effective ways of doing it is there's a bazillion ways to do this. So by no means am I saying this is the only way to get people to inspire and follow you. But I use my passion. I feel like when I'm passionate about things, it shows. People know exactly where I sit and the way I talk and the way I communicate. Like I hopefully try to energize people towards whatever mission or thing that we're trying to accomplish. 2, I use humor a lot. Anybody who knows me, public speaking, I'm always injecting humor. I truly believe in having fun, even if sometimes we're tackling really difficult, challenging things. And I think that could be disarming. It cuts tension oftentimes. And I love collaborating and doing things in teams. It's not about me, it's about we, and how can we get this done. And so when you have somebody who's not just trying to hog it all up and the success or take all the credit, but is really trying to have a team win, I think those are the kinds of things that people are drawn to and want to be a part of.
Your job can be seen as very stressful, especially when you guys are rolling out the Spanish-capable digital banking, the ITI and mortgages, and the Empowerment Small Business Loan Program. When those barriers of frustration come up, how do you navigate that, being in your position and having that authority?
Excellent question. I think the first thing is understanding that you're never going to bat 1,000 and managing your own expectations, and at the same time managing the expectations of the people that you serve or the people you're trying to serve is also important. At the end of the day, you understand that we have to do the best we can with what we have, and you're not going to always be able to please everyone. So in any job, there's going to be moments where you're going to be frustrated and things are going to not come out the way you do it. You have two choices. You can curl up like a little ball and cry and take your ball and go home, or you can pick yourself back up and figure out, how do you maximize the opportunity? How do you maximize your leadership given the constraints that you currently have? And that's what I choose to do nowadays. I'm not saying I was always like that. have been known in my past to throw a fit when things didn't go my way, but I've learned that, especially in the last few years, it's better to do things right than to do them fast. And patience is not my forte. I have a bias for action, and anybody who works with me knows that. But I also see the forest, not just the trees. So when you zoom out and you do big picture analysis and you see, like, are we creating impact? Are we really moving the needle? It may not be as much as we want to, but it's still moving the needle. Then I think we have to be happy with that and just keep fighting the fight and trying to score touchdowns and make positive change. But I think, frankly, it comes with maturity and experience. I wasn't always that way, so I don't want to profess that I was born wired this way. It's something that I acquired over time.
To wrap up the podcast, we like to do a couple of rapid fire questions.
So here comes the rapid fire.
Rapid fire. A small daily habit that's made the biggest difference in your career?
Waking up at 5 a.m. and working out. I didn't always do that, but it really brings balance to my life, and it keeps me intellectually and physically fit.
One thing every student should add or remove from their resume right now?
I think everyone should remove, to the extent it's still there, proficient in Windows, Word, Excel, and stuff like that. Those are table stakes. So if you're a student that still has that on there, that's the equivalent of saying I'm proficient at using a cell phone. And that you should add is maybe a section that says, like, notable achievements or something that's more general in nature, that you just highlight. Typically resumes are a chronology of your work experience or educational experience, but I'm talking about a third section that says notable achievements. Like, what are some things that really stand out that you've been a part of that you'd like to share with the group?
And then your favorite local Indianapolis restaurant for a celebratory dinner?
I'm a big fan of Delicia in Broad Ripple. It's kind of like a Latin fusion restaurant. There's so many good restaurants out there, but I tend to, when we have a special occasion, we tend to go down to Delicia.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed being here.